The US government has approved the sale of 40 new F-16 fighter jets to Turkey after Ankara ratified Sweden's accession to NATO. The US is also willing to readmit Turkey into the F-35 program if Ankara addresses the Washington's reservations about S-400 air defense systems that is secured from Russia. How does this decision align with the broader US foreign policy goals in the region? More details in my program now. You watch IDD Talks with Anastasia Lavrina, and joining me now from Ankara is the professor of Başkent University, Hasan Ünal. Warm welcome to IDD Talks.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ünal, thank you so much for joining IDD Talks. And my first question, what are the geopolitical implications of this decision of Biden's administration to approve the sale of F-16 fighter jets to Turkey?
I wouldn't see a lot of geopolitical implications related to this sale of F-16 by the United States to Turkey. But there are certain basically points which directly interest Turkish-American relations, bilateral relations. The Turkish-American relations are not on a solid ground. It's been undermined by a number of problems, mostly emanating from the United States, the US policy of trying to carve out a Kurdish state in the Middle East, which certainly threatens, among others, Turkey's territorial integrity, the US inimical position on the question of Cyprus to Turkey, and a number of other things when it comes to Joe Biden, who is certainly regarded with justice in Ankara and across Turkey as a openly Turkophobe person. So you get a lot of problems directly, basically, concerning the Turkish-American relations. And there was also one other dimension to that, that is Turkey's rapprochement with Russia over the last few years, which I think is very important, both for Turkey and Russia. And, it's been essentially a very good policy by which Turkey is certainly cultivating best possible ties to Russia. And Russia is also cultivating good relations with Turkey. And it is on the basis of national interests and certainly beneficial for both. And all that reflected very badly on the US position and attitude towards Turkey. So when Turkey decided to purchase the S-400 missiles, for a number of reasons, Turkey needs the S-400 air defense missiles, and also it actually asked the United States to allow the purchase in the first place and all that, and the United States basically declined the request. And then Turkey turned to Russia and bought them. Then the Turkish-American relations went through a new round of deterioration, which resulted in the US refusal to keep Turkey on board in the production of F-35 fighting aircraft.
Mr. Ünal, I'm sorry, you touched a very important issue, F-35 and Russian's S-400. So in the United States, it was stated that Turkey can return to F-35 program if S-400 issue resolved. What do you think about this statement, and what reactions in Turkey we can expect?
I don't think so. What I think, basically, my guts tell me that the United States will come back to knocking on the doors of Turkey and saying, regardless of whatever, with regard to the S-400s, whether you keep them or whether you, whatever you do with them, can you please come back and buy our F-35 fighter jets? Because the F-35 business is a very expensive one, and it doesn't seem to be getting on very well in many respects. So many F-35 planes crashed, from the United States to Nordic countries to Japan. Quite a number of F-16s basically crashed, and F-35 planes crashed, and perhaps Turkey will, in the end, have a sigh of relief, saying that, oh, finally, they have actually chucked us out. So good. Because what Turkey has done in response is that it's been concentrating on the production of its own fighter jet, which is going to be on a par with the F-35 jets. But it'll take some time until it basically gets into the inventory of the Turkish armed forces, particularly the Air Force, something like 8 to 10 years. Meanwhile, Turkey might need new aircraft, and in that sense, from a technical and military point of view, so many experts are of the opinion that it would be better to have latest version of F-16s, because F-16s is something the Turkish pilots, Turkish Air Force is quite familiar with. Indeed, we produced F-16s under patent, and Turkey even sold some 50 plus F-16s in the 1990s, I think, to Egypt, of course, in collaboration with the United States. So we know the F-16s quite well, and these latest version of the F-16s and their modernization kits and blah, blah, are a better choice rather than the F-35, because F-35 would get Turkey back totally dependent and reliant on the United States, something Turkey doesn't want to anymore, because in terms of the Navy, Turkey is almost 90+%, if not 100%, independent now. It is producing its own naval vessels, and all the ammunition and weapons basically installed on naval vessels and what have you are nationally produced. And in terms of the land forces, it is again over 90% independent. And why should you remain totally dependent on the United States in the case of the Air Force?
Mr. Ünal, and how do you think this decision is aligned with the broader United States interest in the South Caucasus? And why does the United States rely on Turkey when it comes to security issues in the region of the South Caucasus?
Well, there is something called multipolarity. So multipolarity, which emerged with the Russian special military operation, began in Ukraine, and it has gained speed over the last 2 years in particular. And now with Israel's military operation and attack, basically what is happening is that even the United States elite seem to be grasping the bitter reality for them, that is multipolarity. And in a multipolar world order, you can't basically sort of sideline a huge country like Turkey. If you do, well, for instance, in the case of F-16s, let me just give you an example. If they continually to cold shoulder Turkey, in the end, Turkey would look, on the one hand, concentrate more on its production of its own plane, and at the same time would look for other options. Maybe in the West, something like French warplanes, or non-Western sources like Russia or China. Then that would mean Turkey would basically not act in collaboration with the United States over regional matters and over also global matters. And the more so that the events and Turkish policy has demonstrated over the last 2 years since the start of the war in Ukraine. So basically, when you have a Turkey like that, then what are you going to do? Is it something you have actually gained, or is it something, a huge loss? Certainly the answer is obvious. So they are coming around now with certain proposals and all this and the other. What they need is a Turkey which is in close cooperation with the United States, also in the war in Ukraine. For instance, they expect Turkey to lift the Montreux Treaty regulations and act together with the United States, Britain, and others in the Black Sea against Russia. But I would think these are all very wild dreams.
So, Mr. Ünal, I can conclude from your answer that the strengthening of military cooperation between the United States of America and Turkey will not affect the relations between Ankara and Moscow.
I don't think so, because I call it actually the art of juggling on the part of Ankara. Indeed, I wrote several articles and several pieces for Russian institutions like Valdai, and also for some of the Russian newspapers like Vedomosti, in which I certainly argued that the Turkish foreign policy in a multipolar world setting is going to be like the art of juggling. So on the one hand, it will remain in NATO, but at the same time, it will cultivate best possible ties with Russia and look for ways of cooperation with China and also with the important countries of the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, the Gulf Arab countries, including Iran and others. So it is going to be a multi-faceted foreign policy. And in that sense, Turkey's ties to Moscow would hardly get affected.
Mr. Ünal, and one more question about our country, about Azerbaijan. This week, the delegation of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey visited Baku. We had several official meetings held here in Azerbaijan, and definitely the issues related to interparliamentary and the security cooperations are on the agenda. What do you think about this visit? What do you think is worth highlighting from this visit?
Well, it is even beyond a special relationship. So when I talk to the Russians, the Westerners, the Chinese, and others, I say Azerbaijan is something different, and Azerbaijan is too dear to us. Okay, so as many Turkish high-ranking officials have said it on many occasions. So Azerbaijan has access to Turkey's military arsenal, and whatever Turkey has, Azerbaijan could have it. So as the last 3 decades of close cooperation have demonstrated, we don't have to basically trump up this cooperation all the time, but it is always there, and it is going to gain pace, I think, with time. And after all, two brotherly and sisterly, states, but one nation.
Mr. Ünal, thank you. Thank you so much for joining the program today.
You're welcome.